Dublin, always such a fantastic and welcoming city to visit. It's actually the first game back here for the Irish national team in their home city since their World Cup qualifying campaign ended here in rather disastrous fashion against Denmark. The boys in green against the red, white and blue, and plenty of support here for the US national team, as always. Big night for that man. John O'Shea bids a fond farewell tonight to the international stage. What a servant he has been. He's been part of the Irish national team since 2001. There will be a moment of silence for some important figures in Irish football over the years before we kick off.
Who had such a big impact on Irish football, including James Maxie McCann, Jackie Mooney, Izzy Desu, Sean McCaffrey and Liam Miller.
As is customary, a moment of applause rather than silence. The US received plenty of applause and plaudits for their game on Monday night against Bolivia, albeit a Bolivia B team, and maybe that's been kind, Taylor, but they took care of business.
Yeah, but the reality is it's about getting some young players an understanding and some experience in playing at the international stage, but make no mistake about it, today, much different opponent than there was against Bolivia.
An opponent also who is reeling from their own display on Monday night. They were beaten 2-0 in Paris by the French, and quite frankly, Taylor, it could have been 10-0. Such was the dominance of Les Bleus. And Ireland have been really heavily criticised here in the national media for that display. Dave Sarachan, we talked to him yesterday, the US coach, expecting a very different sort of tempo and test tonight for his young side. Bobby Wood getting involved for the first time. Interested to see his return. You already picked up on his insertion into the lineup. That was after Josh Sargent had started and scored, of course, against Bolivia. And Seamus Coleman out on the far side for Ireland. Declan Rice. If you're looking for one for the future for Ireland, and Martin O'Neill certainly is, Declan Rice would be a key name and a breakout campaign in the English Premier League with West Ham United.
Well, his teammate Shane Duffy, after the game against France last week, said he's a captain for the future. So he's one of the players today that Ireland want to get many touches through the midfield. I think he's also one of the players that, as the United States look at their future, Ireland's looking at their future going through Declan Rice.
Dave Sarachan, a quick look at him. 5th game in charge. They haven't lost under him yet. They drew 1-1 against Portugal. 1-0 victory against Paraguay, 0-0 against Bosnia, and then that win against Bolivia on Monday.
And I think from our conversation with Dave Sarachan yesterday, you could hear his excitement with the 3 in the midfield. Trapp sitting in front of the 2 center backs, but then the 2 young 19-year-olds, Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, sitting in front. You've already seen it 2 minutes in here. The United States will press, and a big part of that is underneath Bobby Wood. That anchor of Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, one stepping up. Good win here from Tyler Adams, and then ultimately you get some speed in wide areas in Tim Weah and Rubio Rubin.
Timothy Weah, who went to ground there, got on the score sheet and became the 4th youngest goal scorer in US history, with the 3rd against Bolivia, edging out Josh Sargent, who just scored.
Who scored about, what, 3 minutes before him?
A bit of an awkward moment at the back. Carter Vickers, and he was forced to commit the foul.
Well, and I think that's one of the things I want to watch today is Cameron Carter-Vickers with a little pressure on him. How does he deal with that pressure, and how does he react? The tug of the jersey from O'Dowda, then dangerous set piece here for Ireland going forward.
Carter Vickers, of course, who's on Spurs' books, but has been playing away in the English Championship with Sheffield United and Ipswich this year.
Bill Hamid screaming at Tim Weah here, making sure that he's outside that near post. This is a difficult spot here for Bill Hamid.
Hamid making just his 6th appearance for the national team, not called into action. The free kick unable to clear the first defender, but Ireland staying on the front foot here. Hendrick trying to fashion something, but the ball was too strong. As James McLean scored a massive goal for Ireland. In fact, the last time he scored for his country was the winner against Wales that put them into that World Cup playoff qualifier. Think back to last November, and Ireland looked in great shape, didn't they? They were pitted against Denmark in that playoff, and they went to Copenhagen, got a 0-0 draw in the first leg of that playoff. They took the lead here, Taylor, 1-0, and then proceeded to lose 5-1. And it meant they were going to miss their 4th consecutive World Cup. Haven't been to one since 2002.
Well, you and I were actually together watching some of those European playoffs. That result was probably the most surprising to me. Even so, Sweden advancing in the playoff the way they did, Ireland losing at home the way they did after having a lead, I think that was the biggest surprise of the UEFA World Cup qualifying. That's a good spot there from Will Trapp. The ability to switch the point of attack and get DeAndre Yedlin in open field.
And he has Weah for company. Yedlin continuing his run, got a little tangled. Unable to take the ball with him, but Weah taking over. Not too often you can say you've got the son of a president playing for your national team, is it? But Timothy Weah, of course, the son of the great and legendary George Weah, who's now the president of Liberia.
What a big year coming up for Tim Weah as well. You know, when you look at his age, 18, same age as Christian Pulisic when Tuchel took over Dortmund. Now he's taken over PSG this year. So you look at Tim Weah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in preseason. Does he go on loan? If he doesn't, does he play a factor in that first team? But this is a big season in the growth of Tim Weah.
Talking of being on loan, that was Matt Miazga getting his touch, and he has it again. He's spent the last 2 years away from Chelsea and did really well this year with Vitesse in the Dutch Eredivisie.
It's a sloppy ball from DeAndre Yedlin.
Not going to get there, is he? DeAndre Yedlin, who was such a stalwart this year for Newcastle United. Over 30 Premier League starts, only the 4th American to reach that figure in Premier League history. DeAndre Yedlin following on from Jeff Cameron, Clint Dempsey and Brian McBride. Jeff Hendrick with the Irish corner. Had to be on the far post. Posed some promise there. John Walters trying to flick it towards goal.
Well, and DeAndre Yedlin having words here with Matt Miazga, but Yedlin doing a good job of that second phase of defending that set piece. The first ball coming back, headed across the goal. DeAndre Yedlin staying with his mark and Jonathan Walters.
In it comes, and the header flashing across the face of goal, and it was John O'Shea on his farewell.
Well, and you and I were sitting here preparing for the game, and here we are 8 minutes in wondering, did Bill Hamid really want to play in this game? The last time he was in Dublin, he had to pick the ball out of his own net 4 times. It was a disappointing performance. And already here, 8 minutes in, we've seen 2 dangerous set pieces here from Ireland.
Yeah, that game you referenced, Taylor, was one that Hamid admitted he'd rewatched 50 times in the intervening years. 4-1 defeat in 2014.
I mean, I can understand 3 or 4. Why would you want to watch that 50 times?
Same reason you watch Caddyshack about that number of times.
It's a little different. What a day here for 24 of Ireland. Graham Burke playing in Ireland's first division for Shamrock. Only his second cap. He got his debut last week against France. What a moment.
Oh, and that was a inviting corner again from Jeff Hendrick. The Irish perhaps enjoying slightly the better of the early exchanges here. Certainly more pressure on Bill Hamid's goal. It's Shane Duffy making his way back, the Brighton centre-back. Yeah, 4-1. Remember the margin of defeat here last time out, November of 2014. In what was the US's first trip to Europe post the Brazil World Cup.
That was actually the first taste of Jordan Morris that we saw. I remember the training before in this stadium, seeing Jordan Morris and the buzz surrounding Jordan Morris. You wonder what's going on in the mind of Will Trapp. Even though publicly he hasn't really stated it, you would have to think that he's got a little chip on his shoulder, not getting a full chance under Jurgen Klinsmann and even Bruce Arena the second stint, but he has an opportunity today. When you look at how successful Will Trapp has been under Greg Berhalter in Columbus, what if Greg Berhalter is your next national team coach? Is Will Trapp a staple of that? Intriguing. I think Will Trapp gets a real opportunity today, and ultimately France next week as well.
He's just recently signed a contract extension with Columbus, isn't he, Will Trapp? And he's captaining the national team for the 3rd time today. First appearance on European soil for him in his professional career. There's Burke combining with Walters, who's going to give this a go, and Bill Hamid wasn't immediately sure that was missing the left-hand post.
Well, and here we are talking about Will Trapp sitting in front of Cameron Carter-Vickers and Matt Miazga, and that ultimately comes down to second balls. And I think Will Trapp's going to be tested today physicality-wise. Is he up to the challenge? But it's also the communication between 2 new center backs behind him. Jonathan Walters in a good spot. But it's that relationship and that communication from Miazga and Carter-Vickers to Will Trapp that's the key today. And ultimately, if that triangle, so to speak, is on point, then the McKennies and the Adams of the world, they can go chase, they can high press, and really make life difficult for Ireland getting any rhythm in possession. But the key here is that triangle of Carter-Vickers, Miazga, and Will Trapp anchoring this back 4 of the United States.
It is a 25-player roster Dave Sarakan has brought to Europe for this 2-game mini-tour. They play France next week. The average age of the squad, by the way, is just a shade over 23. Only 3 players out of the 25-man squad born before the 1990 World Cup. Here's Bobby Wood. He's produced some of his most memorable displays in a US shirt on European soil. Wood, remember his goals in Holland, in Germany.
He's got a big decision to make over the summer.
Massive decision.
Because when you've had that kind of season with only 2 goals and really struggled, you know, he could use this friendly today, the friendly against France, score a couple goals, have a good appearance, but then it's ultimately where do you want to go? Obviously, we've heard rumors about Huddersfield Town. Is that the right move? Is it better for him to go start and play game in and game out, even if it's in the 2nd division in Germany? But that's a huge part of the United States and ultimately Bobby Wood's career. In the prime of his career at age 25, he's got a big decision to make over the next 6-7 weeks here.
Yeah, coming off a year he'd rather forget. Just 2 goals with Hamburg, and of course that grand old German club relegated for the first time in their history.
Oh, and so much over the next two friendlies, Adrian, is about laying the groundwork for the future, but it's also about individuals wanting to take their game to another level. That's the subject of my Continental Tire Analyst Corner. Matt Miazga, Cameron Carter-Vickers, both center backs for the future, but also two center backs that want an upgrade to their club careers. But you get the sense that we're looking at the center midfield partnership of the next 5 to 6 years in Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie. Look at those two partnerships as one of the things to watch, and ultimately one of those things I think we'll be talking about 4 or 5 years down the road.
Yeah, Dave Sarachan could almost hear the glee in his voice yesterday talking about those two and how they complement each other, different skill sets. Tyler Adams, of course, with an engine that is perhaps beyond all others, his athleticism second to none.
Well, and I also think Weston McKennie's another one where he could play in the role that Will Trapp is playing, and if Christian Pulisic is on this roster. But I look at Pulisic's role for the national team the same way I look at Dortmund. He's very successful when playing in a wide position. So ultimately, I think when everyone's healthy and for the future, ideally you want Christian Pulisic in the spot where he is with his club team. Yeah. And if you've got Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, and those core group of players in the midfield, you've got a real good foundation for the future.
Well, that midfield going to work at the moment. Yedlin's cross was put on the right spot. Bobby Wood appreciating the service, couldn't make anything of it.
I like the early movement here 15 minutes in from Timothy Weah coming inside, because ultimately it's going to open up space for Yedlin to get into the final third. But we've seen 2 or 3 times Weah coming in, supporting Bobby Wood, looking for combination play, but ultimately allowing DeAndre Yedlin to get into the final 25, 30 yards of that attack.
Colin Doyle, the Irish goalkeeper today. And she came into these 2 games. The Irish were without their first 3 starting goalkeepers. Again, a really poor display by the Irish in Paris in the pouring rain on Monday. The headlines were all about Ireland bringing the weather, but not much else to the proceedings. And their management team, including Roy Keane, were not shy about it, deriding that performance quite publicly. So a little point to prove, little chip on the shoulder perhaps for the Irish today. It's a little more so than normal in an international friendly. Yedlin to Carter-Vickers, and now Miazga. Well, they tried to work their way out of a jam, but the Irish press paying off, and now McLean trying to take over. Sharp turn by O'Dowda, Callum O'Dowda, the Bristol City man. It's a driving run from him. Walters looking to return it. O'Dowda, who was one of the final cuts of the Irish team at the last European Championships.
Yeah, but at 23 years of age, he's been highly touted for his pace 1v1 ability, and you see it right here. Blowing by Weah and Will Trapp. Unlucky with the final touch, but great run forward.
Player squad for Dave Sarachan, as I mentioned, only 4 of them based in MLS at the moment. And 2 from the Red Bulls, 2 from the Columbus Crew. Very interesting when you consider all the talk, you already mentioned it, about who the next full-time manager might be, and the managers of those 2 respective clubs certainly very much in the picture. It'll be Jesse Marsh and Greg Berhalter. Duffy. Feeding it down the line. Burke is roaming all over the place at the moment. Graham Burke, ostensibly on paper at least the centre forward. McLean. Go! Still the long shadows, the early evening sunshine.
Adrian, that's a good observation, though, because you're watching Burke in his movement. Ultimately, it's causing some headaches right now for Miazga and Carter Vickers.
Long chase as well out to the far side, which Seamus Coleman can't quite win. You talked about it, Graham Burke, and they've been making a big deal of this, and rightly so. First Shamrock Rovers player called up for Ireland in over 30 years. Shot from distance, stinging the palms of Bill Hamid. He did well, though, just to beat it away. Perhaps Carrier should have done something similar last week in the Champions League final.
Only took you 20 minutes to bring up Karius?
We knew we had to get there eventually, didn't we?
No, but you know, all kidding aside, Bill Hamid did a very good job. Exactly, 100%. Because this ball's moving, it's dipping. You know, and oftentimes, I've always criticized goalkeepers that want to punch this, but watch this ball and the technique. That ball is moving. Karius's mistake in the Champions League final is example 1A of why goalkeepers, more often than not, are going through the fundamentals now of just punching that away instead of trying to catch it with both hands.
Good step in by Tyler Adams. It works out nicely for Tim Weah here. His cross was targeting Rubio Rubin.
And that's one of the things I'm watching today of Tyler Adams and his maturation at this level. Is you hear Jesse Marsh and the Red Bull staff talk all about his engine and how much ground he covers and the amount of pressure he puts on the opposition. But then when you look at the numbers and the stats inside, well, how many tackles does he have? How many, you know, competes does he have? One, so to speak, where you hear all the time coaches talking about competing and winning those balls. That's the growth of Tyler Adams, is the Jesse Marshes and the New York Red Bulls. They want to see some product of all that ground being covered by Tyler Adams. And already 21 minutes in, we've seen a couple tackles won, and it's put the United States in the counter going the other way.
Will Trapp acting as the midfield conduit. Ireland win this back and will look to press forward. Trapp trying to hold them off. Shane Duffy involved in the build-up, which breaks down. Here's Weston McKennie. What a fabulous year it was for the 19-year-old McKennie. 25 appearances for Schalke, 22 of them in the Bundesliga, Taylor, and that was the team that finished second in the league as well, behind only Bayern Munich.
When was the last time the United States had two players on Bundesliga.com, one for the 5 players that broke out in 17 and 18, and one that's players that are going to break out in 18 and 19?
Yep.
Weston McKennie and Josh Sargent. I can't tell you the last time, if ever, that 2 Americans were on that list.
Well, Josh Sargent, we may well see later on. The thought is very much, Taylor, that he will be pushing for a starting role with Werder Bremen next year. Meanwhile, the US have themselves a corner here. Rubio Rubin, who recently made the move from Europe back to North America, but of course he's playing in Liga MX now with Tijuana. It'll be Will Trapp who takes command.
Keep an eye on Matt Miazga, Carter Vickers. One of them on that back post.
Trapp's corner.
That's a great ball in.
provided some consternation, didn't it, for the Irish? Duffy just happy to get it away anywhere. No one really attacking the near post area in a white shirt, and they'll have another chance to do it from the opposite side. Traps corner, flicks all the way through, the shot from distance, oh, and it was turned towards goal instinctively by Rubin. Tyler Adams, it was who fizzed it in initially.
Well, and Tyler Adams doing exactly what he's supposed to do, clean up any kind of set-piece clearance at top of the 18, hits it perfectly on goal, and I think Rubin needs to get out of the way here personally, because I think Tyler Adams hits this perfectly, it's on goal. I think it's difficult for Rubin to pick that out, but good play here from Tyler Adams.
And the reaction from the US fans here at Dublin. It was close. Rubin hasn't scored yet at national team level. Pushing forward here.
It's been a difficult 2 years for Rubin with that knee injury and ultimately leading to him chasing the right amount of playing time in Europe and ultimately coming back. All eyes were expecting to see him in MLS, but it turns out a last-minute switch. He's now in Liga MX, but he's another one, Adrian. When you think about it, his debut was 4 years ago. He's still only 22 years of age. What a touch here from Weah.
Clever from Weah. Good recovery, but the US still on the prowl here. Bobby Wood trying to make things happen, and decent left-footed effort from Wood.
Well, and as players, no matter if you're 18, 25, 31, all you want is an opportunity, but then you've got to take the opportunity. And just watching Timothy Weah at such a young age, he's not shy to pull it off. Former U.S. men's national team Eddie Johnson said he's got the special sauce in tight spaces. Right there, a good example of that. Opening the game up for Bobby Wood in the United States going forward. And there's going to be growing pains, but still 26 minutes in, some of his movement and some of his touches, it's opened up space for the United States going forward.
Well, Dave Sarachan talked about it yesterday. It's all about assembling the building blocks to move forward. Repairing wounds that are still very fresh in the mind. Even though it's now been 7 months from that awful night in Couva.
Well, and you can say what you want about Dave Sarachan over the last 6-7 months, but how many people would really want to take that job, put your head down, roll your sleeves up, and put out a team? And when you listen to the players talk and you listen to the staff around Dave Sarachan, the United States men's national team, he took it on the chin for a lot of people that should be doing that job, and he's given some of these kids an opportunity. And listen, there could be fair criticism of, did he use all the subs properly against Paraguay? Is he calling in the right players or whatnot? But there's a lot of things going on right now. There's only 4 MLS players on this roster, Adrian, because MLS clubs didn't want to release their players.
Yeah, it's fair
So
enough.
Everyone around the U.S. men's national team right now wants to get through the World Cup and move on. That's been a difficult task for Dave Sarachan, and I applaud him for just getting the job done with his head down and moving on.
Yeah, and it was interesting listening to him yesterday saying, really, there's been very little dialogue with US soccer in the 7 months. They've kind of left him to his own devices. Just said, get on with it. They, of course, have had other issues to deal with. We'll get to those as Ireland announced their intentions here with Declan Rice on the ball.
But just to make it clear, Adrian, I'm not saying MLS clubs are wrong either. I mean, they're in the middle of their regular season, and these are friendlies that, with all due respect, they don't really mean anything. So I understand that from both sides.
Yeah. Well, talking of MLS, doubleheader for you today on ESPN2. As soon as we're done here, we will take you to Providence Park. Portland against LA. The Timbers and the Galaxy are really
6 in a row for Portland.
Yeah. Giovanni Savarese's men trying to make it 7. Can Zlatan and company stop them? 5 Eastern here on ESPN2. Hope you'll stick around for that. Why wouldn't you?
Here's one for you. Was Armenteros' goal better than Bergkamp's against Newcastle in 2002?
But the comparison was the right one because it was so similar. The individual technique and vision. He knew exactly what he was doing.
And Danny Wilson did not.
No. Villafania getting that clear, and now Rubin is on his way. It's 3 against 4 here for the US. If Rubin can fashion something where it's still in the vicinity. McKennie helping it on. They've had an increasing proportion of possession over the last 5 or 10 minutes. The US, as they've really bedded down into this game. Will Trapp again, funneling things around midfield. Villafana surveying the scene. Cameron Vickers. Yeah, it was just fractionally too late. John Walters beating him to the punch. And the referee, Andrew Dallas from Scotland, showing a yellow card to the young Spurs man.
Oh, and Cameron Carter-Vickers coming off his first real season of playing with the first team with Sheffield United, and as he progresses through the levels of England and ultimately the international level, timing of tackles, understanding the pace of the game, all of that is going to be part of his growth. He just re-signed with Tottenham.
Yeah, he did.
New contract until 2021. I think this summer's big for Cameron Carter-Vickers. These 2 friendlies. What's the next loan and what is that level? But I do think one of the criticism of his in his young career is that he's been always that half a step late on challenges. Right there, a good example.
I know he was someone that Jurgen Klinsmann always kept very close tabs on with his Spurs connections. He joined the Spurs Academy at age 11, Carter-Vickers.
But it's the same criticism or critique I would have of Eric Palmer-Brown. You can have as much potential as you want, but at some point you've got to see that potential at whatever level. And I think Carter-Vickers this year, we actually saw that for the first time on his loan with Sheffield United. But then I think the next loan is going to be even more important, just like it is for Matt Miazga.
Yeah.
Ideally, if Matt Miazga is not playing with Chelsea this year, he's got to be playing in Germany at some level. You can't be playing your 3rd season in Holland if Matt Miazga wants to make that next step in his career.
Well, he played 43 of Vitesse's 45 games this year. Miazga, he helped them into the Europa League. They won a playoff, and he scored a big goal in that playoff against Utrecht. But you're right, Taylor. What's next for Miazga if he's not going to be forcing his way into the Chelsea setup? Let's face it, plenty of Chelsea players on loan at big clubs all over Europe.
Yep.
You could assemble a pretty good-looking squad out of Chelsea players on loan, players that haven't made it to the Chelsea first team. Remember, Kevin De Bruyne didn't make it into the Chelsea first team.
Mo Salah didn't either.
Nope. Just past the half-hour mark here in Dublin. I hope you're enjoying this with us. Adrian Healy and Taylor Twellman. The 10th all-time meeting between the US and Ireland. The US have suffered nothing except defeats whenever they visited the city of Dublin. This is McLean feeding it in, but that's a gift for Bill Hamid, who's, I imagine, grateful for the playing time this afternoon. He's seen minutes hard to come by, hasn't he, since his move to Denmark. He played just once for Midtjylland in April.
Well, and I think both teams are relying too much when the ball goes wide, whipping and crosses. When you look at the strengths of both back fours, Adrian, two center backs that deal well with crosses, as do the goalkeepers, especially in the United States. I like to see a little bit more combination play in wide areas with Rubin and Weah and trying to take these big center backs on.
All right, on cue, Rubin.
That's better, though. You know, I think if they can isolate the two fullbacks and ultimately try to combine and play through them instead of where the ball gets in wide areas whipping it in, where Duffy, O'Shea, and Kevin Long, they eat those for lunch.
Tim Weah, who made his PSG debut in March. And now John O'Shea is going to leave the scene for the final time at international level. What a stalwart he has been, always a class act on and off the pitch. Played in 2 Euros for Ireland. Of course, 12 fantastic years at Old Trafford with Manchester United, where he won everything. Also played in every position, by the way, for United, including goalkeeper. Leaves the scene with 118 caps. Third highest total ever for Ireland, behind only Shay Given and Robbie Keane. Talking of Robbie Keane, the former Los Angeles Galaxy man who's back here in Ireland, Dave Sarachan enjoying dinner with Robbie Keane the other night. He told us much to catch up on. All smiles for the man who many consider may have a career in club management should he choose to go that way. He may play one more year at club level yet with Sunderland. Darragh Lenihan is his replacement, the Blackburn Rovers defender. O'Dowda was the man fouled by Yedlin. Interesting hearing DeAndre Yedlin talk during the week about just how at home he feels in Newcastle, comparing it as a city to Seattle, Taylor, of course. The help that Rafa Benitez has given him developing as a player. Made that move from Seattle to Spurs, didn't he, right after the 2014 World Cup. Never quite broke in there, had to go to Sunderland, and now just up the northeast coast to Newcastle.
It's hard not to notice the growth of DeAndre Yedlin underneath Rafa Benitez over the last 2 years. I think his individual defending 1v1 moments, but also, you know, Adrian, the one criticism, and I've often led that, is when he does go forward, DeAndre Yedlin needs a little bit more quality in the final third, and I think he has shown that. But it's very apparent to me that Rafa Benitez and the last, I'd say, 18 months at Newcastle has made DeAndre Yedlin a better defender. And ironically, another player on this roster, Shaq Moore, reminds me of DeAndre Yedlin 4 years ago.
Yeah.
An athletic right back, can compete, but lacks a little bit of the technical quality. It's going to be interesting to see what Shaq Moore's growth is over the next 18 months to 2 seasons.
And we may well see more later on here this evening. Saw Yedlin's stats for the season with Newcastle. Who would have ever thought that we'd be talking about DeAndre Yedlin as the grand old man of the US squad in terms of caps? He's the most capped player, 50 of them. And of course, whoever we may or may not see later on, a chance we will see them next week as the US will switch across the channel, across the Irish Sea and the English Channel, and go to France and provide the official World Cup send-off for Les Bleus as well. That game in Lyon. We'll have that for you same time, same place next week, actually over on ESPN, 3 o'clock Eastern start time. French team, who we mentioned, absolutely dismantled this same Ireland side on Monday night in Paris. It was 2, but it could have been 10.
If they sent a second 11 to Russia, would they make it to the quarterfinals?
They have a pretty decent looking second 11, don't they? A lot of people are having a lot of fun with that.
When you look at their 11 going to Russia and even their 23, Adrian, how many are under the age of 26?
Yeah. There's James McLean feeding it in, and had to be watchful of Villafaña beyond the far post. Villafaña, the man who won an MLS Cup with Portland, has just won a Liga MX title.
And it's been easy pickings for the back four of the United States. McLean's balls in have been drifting to that back post and right on cue. Cameron Carter-Vickers and Matt Miazga fumbling that one, but Ireland's just, the one criticism I had of their World Cup qualifying campaign is, Adrian, in the final third, their one trick, get it wide, whip it in, and hope for a miracle, and then we've seen that in the first half.
Well, goals have been in rather short supply, that's for certain, for the Irish of late. They've only scored 6 goals in their last 9 games. Hendrick's corner. Now, winning the header beyond the far post was Duffy, but in doing so he couldn't keep it down. It's such a big year with Brighton this year. Shane Duffy only missed 1 game in their Premier League campaign.
He's had an interesting last couple of weeks too in the headlines of many of the tabloids, and
yes, he has. Not for what he's been doing on the field, that's for sure. Let's just leave it at that as O'Dowda presses forward here. Well, did he go down? He did. Referee Andrew Dallas deciding it warranted a foul. I think you can tell the US defenders didn't exactly agree with that decision.
Well, O'Dowda has a half a step on DeAndre Yedlin. And Yedlin's going to come in late here, and I think DeAndre Yedlin has a real argument here that he won. It's that sweeping leg, that right foot that comes in late. See, the left foot wins the ball, and then the right foot comes through. I'm actually okay with the call.
Yeah. That was the perfect angle to look at, wasn't it?
Well, and all of us, whether we're ex-players or current players, we all think, well, you got the ball, it doesn't matter. Well, the reality is if you go through the defender to get the ball, it's still a foul.
And as a result, best opportunity of the game from a set piece for either side. Jeff Hendrick will be standing over this with some interest for the Irish. So too Graham Burke, who has scored several goals from distance in the League of Ireland this year for Shamrock Rovers. There he is, the 24-year-old. It is going to be Burke who hits it right into the wall. And in fact stays down. Got hurt in the scrap for the follow-up. Still the attack is on. Burke waiting, but nicely away from Miazga. Tried to keep that under the jumping wall, didn't he? But
and then it's the old follow through, take the free kick, and then kick as hard as you can at the defender. Well, Graham Burke's going to have a good story to tell in his second cap.
Yes. Had to miss a vital league game last night. Talking of players being released by their clubs, Shamrock Rovers, as they played Dundalk. Roy Keane was in the crowd to see that, I read this morning. But Burke will be wondering if his first home appearance for the boys in green is going to come to a premature end.
So how quickly last night at dinner do you think Robbie Keane told Dave Sarakin, you know, I've scored more goals than Zlatan for the LA Galaxy?
Within about 3 minutes, I would think.
I'd give it over under 4.5.
Yeah. He's scored more goals than a lot of players, hasn't he, Robbie Keane? Particularly wearing this uniform, by the way. Still far and away the leading all-time scorer from Ireland. I don't know if he'll ever be caught, Taylor. He scored 68 goals for Ireland. The next nearest challenger has 21. Top current player is Shane Long with 17.
Oh, and how many of those goals did he score for Ireland while he was playing his club ball in the United States?
He carried on, coming back every international break, didn't he? And adding to that tally.
Even if 31 were against the Faroe Islands. That was disrespectful. My apologies.
Well, you can only score against whoever you're playing against, Taylor, I guess.
I'm just jealous. I wish I owed a couple games against the Faroe Islands.
Well, Ireland will have to rediscover the scoring touch if they're going to prosper in the UEFA Nations League. That's what's next on tap for the Irish. As they sit and watch the World Cup this summer, they'll be planning for September and the start of that new competition, which we will have coverage of across our ESPN family of networks. McLean, meanwhile, Hamid didn't really deal with it. Is he going to be punished? Well, he wasn't. And a reprieve for Bill Hamid. His opposite number, Colin Doyle, hasn't had too much to do. This was Hamid's moment, Taylor.
Well, and you talked about it. Listen, since his move to Europe, he's been struggling to find playing time, and that's all this is. Matt Miazga extremely upset with Bill Hamid, and rightfully so. As that ball comes in, they're not communicating. But again, you brought it up, Adrian, and it's spot on regarding Bill Hamid, rust playing time. That move to Europe, it hasn't paid off so far.
Well, in 8 years with DC United, he was the unchallenged #1 starter for most of that time. Played nearly 200 times for Ben Olsen's team.
Which is why I would fully expect to see Zach Steffen against France next weekend, because I think if you're the United States, you're Dave Sarakin and whoever else is assessing players, you want to see Zach Steffen.
Meanwhile, Miazga flicking that ball, and it's turned in! It's Bobby Wood! The poaching instinct of Bobby Wood. In first half stoppage time, the US making a set piece count. Miazga won the initial header. Wood provided the finish.
Well, and it's being active. It's finding those seams, but also just looking for those little pockets. I love this ball in here from Will Trapp. But watch Bobby Wood just get in behind the Irish defense. It's staying alive. It's being on your toes. Colin Doyle's got to come off his line if he's not going to come off his line. And that ball lands inside the 6. Give credit to Bobby Wood, staying alive, staying active, and a goal completely against the run of play. Great work here from Bobby Wood after a long, disappointing season in Hamburg.
Well, and if you're a goal scorer in the shop window, what do you want to do more than anything else, Taylor?
Score goals.
And Bobby Wood just has his 12th in a US national team jersey. It separates the sides here. Much to talk about at halftime. The US leading Ireland by a 1-0.